When I found out my husband had cheated, he didn't even try to apologize. Instead, he tried to shift the blame onto me, claiming his affair was my fault because I wasn't giving him enough attention. I listened to his pathetic excuses and realized he wasn't someone worthy of my forgiveness or my time. I calmly told him to go to hell, packed my things, and walked away toward a new life. Yesterday, Travis and I were at the venue where our wedding is supposed to take place. Just 4 months left, and we were finalizing the last details. Sitting at a table, laughing, arguing about flower choices. Everything felt right. Everything felt solid. We met 3 years ago when I moved to this city and started working at a small accounting firm. He was the kind of man parents brag about. Senior analyst at an insurance company, calm, thoughtful. I loved how he cared more about our 3 dogs than about himself. We bought a house outside the city, a big yard because I had always dreamed of getting a horse. I truly believed this was the foundation of our family. Yesterday, we drove to the venue separately. I came straight from work. He came after the gym. At the end of the meeting, Travis said his friend Dan needed a ride because his rental car was gone. He asked if I minded. Of course not, I said, not knowing this would be the beginning of the end. Back home, I made dinner, turned on a TV show, and texted him to ask where he was. Message read. No reply. 1 hour. 2? 3. Where was he? I tried not to spiral. Around 1:30 a.m., I texted Dan, asking if everything was okay. The answer came almost immediately. What are you talking about? I didn't see him today at all. A sharp pain twisted in my chest. I stared at my phone, my mind racing with 1,000 explanations. Maybe Dan was joking? Maybe it was a misunderstanding? My heart pounded against my ribs. I couldn't sleep. I waited until Travis finally came home, reeking of some cheap cologne mixed with a woman's perfume I didn't recognize. Sorry, got stuck, he muttered, rushing into the bathroom. Dan wanted to have a drink. We lost track of time. I nodded without a word. No drama, no accusations, just silence that roared in my ears. When he fell asleep, I picked up his phone. Damn my instincts. A strange number among his recent calls. Short, suggestive messages between him and someone else. My throat tightened painfully. The trust I once wore like armor cracked and fell apart in a single night. I stood by the bedroom door and looked at Travis, my fiancé, the man I trusted with my heart, my future, my life. And that night, I realized something had broken beyond repair. The next morning, I woke myself up with an alarm before dawn. Travis was still sleeping peacefully, and I stared at him like he was a complete stranger. I wanted so badly to believe I was wrong, that it was all in my head, that maybe I was just being paranoid. But my mind clung to the facts. The perfume, the lies about Dan, the unknown calls. I knew I couldn't live in uncertainty anymore. When he woke up, I calmly asked him to show me his texts with Dan. He tensed, as if he already knew where this was going. I accidentally deleted them, he muttered, avoiding my eyes. I said nothing. I didn't need words. His body spoke for him. I asked again. Travis got annoyed and started throwing excuses at me, saying I was overreacting, that it was nothing serious, that I was making things up. And then he slipped. He said, "You pushed me to this with your indifference." And just like that, everything became crystal clear. It wasn't just the betrayal. It had started long before, the moment he decided to blame me for his choices. I asked him directly, "Were you seeing someone else?" He froze, pretended to weigh whether or not to tell the truth. "It was just a kiss." He finally blurted out, "Just a kiss." As if that changed anything. As if we could rewind time and erase the betrayal. I asked again to see the conversation. He refused, said it didn't matter. Then I reminded him about the unknown number I had found on his phone last night. He started dodging, rambling, trying to change the subject. Too many excuses where there should have been a simple truth. The whole time he stayed calm, almost cold, like someone who had already made up his mind. And I stood there in the kitchen, feeling my entire world collapse. The house we built, the plans for a family, the dogs running in the backyard. It all seemed distant now, fake somehow. I walked to the bedroom, closed the door behind me, and sat on the floor for a long time, knees pressed to my chest. I couldn't cry anymore. I couldn't even be angry. There was only emptiness and the realization that I stood before a choice. Cling to the illusion or finally choose myself. I didn't confront him right away. The day dragged on painfully slow. Travis acted like nothing had happened, petting the dogs, ordering takeout, chatting about random things. I watched him and felt something inside me slowly die. After dinner, I asked him if we could talk seriously. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. I asked him straight, "Do you honestly think we can fix this?" He shrugged, as if deciding whether it was even worth the effort. Then he launched into a long speech about how relationships take work from both sides. How, if I had listened more, if I hadn't been so closed off, if I gave him more attention, none of this would have happened. I listened in silence, my fingers gripping the edge of the table. It all boiled down to this. He cheated, and somehow, it was my fault. I reminded him that for the past 6 months, I had been working myself to exhaustion to pay for our home, our wedding, the dog's treatments, that he had been the one insisting I shouldn't pick up a second job while we stabilized. He ignored my words. I felt lonely, he said quietly. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't sorry. He was justifying. Blaming me made it easier for him to live with what he'd done. I asked, "Do you even want to stay together?" He fell silent. 1 minute. 2. Then he said he wasn't sure, that he needed time to think. It felt like a slap. After 7 years, after building a life together, he wasn't sure. I stood up, grabbed a leash, and took the dogs for a walk, forcing myself not to break down in front of him. The night was cool. Stars stretched across the sky like a reminder that there was something bigger than all this small human betrayal. I walked the empty streets, realizing that if I stayed, I would be betraying myself. When I got back home, I found him sprawled on the couch, glued to his phone. He didn't even look up. I walked past him without a word, like silence was the only thing left between us now. Just ruins where once there had been a home. The next morning, I knew it was time to talk about real things. The house, the dogs, the life we were tearing apart piece by piece. I brewed myself a strong black coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and waited for Travis to come downstairs. He looked like he was already tired of all this, like talking to me was just another chore. I started first. I said we needed to decide who would keep the house, how to divide the dogs, how to part ways as civilly as possible. He nodded indifferently as if we were discussing the weather. I offered 2 options. Either I would buy out his share or we'd sell the house and split the money. He said he didn't want the hassle of selling and was willing to let me keep it if I handled all the paperwork quickly. I felt the air leave my lungs. This house had been my dream. The big yard, a place for a horse, dogs, cozy evenings on the porch. I worked for it. We worked for it. Or at least I thought we did. Now it was just another thing to be bartered away. I agreed. For myself. For my new life. Then we talked about the dogs. We had 3. An old Labrador who had always been closer to me, and 2 young German Shepherds Travis adored. I offered to take the Labrador and leave him the Shepherds. He nodded without argument. And again, that cold detachment. Like he didn't care. Or maybe he just wanted to erase me from his life as fast as possible. We discussed the details. Who would pay the insurance? Who would keep the furniture? Who would handle the bills until everything was finalized? The conversation was mechanical. Soulless. I looked at Travis and wondered when we had drifted so far apart. When had he become a stranger? Or maybe I had been clinging to a picture I had painted myself all along. When he went out to the garage to check something, I stayed alone in the kitchen. The dogs laid their heads on my knees. I ran my fingers through their warm fur and realized they had been my true home all along. Not the walls, not the furniture, not even Travis, but this quiet, unconditional presence that never betrayed me. And at that moment, I made a decision. I would survive, no matter how much it hurt. I started to rebuild myself almost mechanically. One evening, when the emptiness in the house felt unbearable, I just got up, put on my sneakers, and walked to the nearest gym. No plan, no expectations, just to feel like I still had control over something in my life. The first workouts were brutal. My body resisted, my thoughts raced. But somewhere deep inside, I felt it. I was moving. I was alive. I was fighting for myself. At the same time, I found a therapist and scheduled my first session. I had never thought I'd need help from someone else. Now I understood. It wasn't weakness. It was a way to pull myself out of the hole. During one session, I said honestly, I'm afraid of becoming weak again. Afraid of trusting the wrong person. My therapist nodded and said, fear wasn't the enemy. It was just part of the path. One day I met Adam, completely by accident, in a little cafe where I was hiding from the rain after a workout. We started talking about dogs, the weather, about how hard it is to build a new life when you had to leave the old one behind. Turns out, he had been through betrayal too. His story was different, but the pain was familiar. We didn't rush anything. We just texted sometimes, had coffee, took the dogs for walks. And it felt so strange. Feeling respected, at peace, not needing to justify who I was. Meanwhile, Travis tried to remind me he existed. He sent neutral messages like, how are you? Or, hope you're doing well. Once he even suggested we meet to talk calmly. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I had made my choice that night, sitting on the bedroom floor holding the dogs. I chose myself. And every day that I got up early, went to the gym, worked toward my future, I confirmed that choice. The fear was still there. The pain didn't disappear, but it didn't control me anymore. I was no longer a victim of circumstances. I was someone who stood back up and kept walking forward. Listing the house for sale was harder than I thought. It wasn't just about paperwork or real estate agents. It was about admitting once and for all that the life I fought for was over. Travis agreed to leave first. He packed his things in a few days without much ceremony. No tears, no final talks, just a handshake over logistics. I stayed behind, managing the last bits of what used to be our shared dream. I hired an appraiser, signed a contract with a realtor, coordinated open houses. It felt mechanical, but every task brought a strange sense of relief. One less chain tying me to the past. At night, the house felt massive and empty. I slept in the guest room because I couldn't stand being in the master bedroom alone. The dogs kept me company, their quiet breathing a small anchor against the loneliness. I handled all the utilities, transferred the mortgage paperwork, sorted out insurance, canceled wedding vendors we hadn't dealt with yet. Every email I sent, every form I signed was another small cut, but also another clean break. I wasn't just moving out of a house. I was moving out of a life that no longer fit. Meanwhile, Travis barely checked in. A few short messages about logistics, nothing more. It was better this way. No pretending, no false hope. Just business. Sometimes I sat in the kitchen late at night, nursing a cup of tea, thinking about how we got here. We weren't evil people, just careless, too comfortable, too willing to ignore cracks until the foundation collapsed. Accepting that was harder than blaming. But it was necessary. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired in a way that only honesty could cure. And so, piece by piece, I dismantled the life I once thought would last forever. And with every piece I let go, I felt lighter. When I finally moved into my new house, it felt surreal. Smaller, simpler, without the sprawling yard we once had, but it was mine. Every nail, every scratch on the floor, every empty wall. It was all a blank page. I signed the papers alone, holding my breath as I scribbled my name. No partner beside me, no shared dreams, just me. The first night, I slept on a borrowed mattress with the one dog that stayed by my side. She curled against me, and for the first time in months, I felt safe. I spent the following days unpacking, organizing, painting walls in colors I chose without compromise. No endless debates about styles or budgets. No second guessing if someone else would approve. Just quiet certainty. Adam visited a few times, helping me carry boxes, bringing coffee, sometimes just sitting with me in comfortable silence. We never talked about the past unless it surfaced naturally. There were no expectations, no pressure to define what we were. And maybe for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for my choices. Meanwhile, my therapist helped me untangle deeper things. Why I had ignored the red flags with Travis. Why I had clung so hard to stability even when it cost me my happiness. Those conversations were raw, painful, but necessary. I started seeing my old life for what it truly was. Not a tragedy, but a lesson. I realized I had confused comfort with love, routine with security. And somewhere in the cracks of my broken plans, I found a version of myself I hadn't met in a long time. Strong, capable, worthy. One evening, standing on my tiny porch, watching the sun set over a modest backyard, I smiled without forcing it. This wasn't the life I once envisioned. It was better. It was real. And it was mine. Time has a strange way of healing you without asking for permission. It's been months since I closed the door on that old life. And sometimes, I barely recognize the person I used to be. I don't check Travis's social media. I don't wonder where he is or who he's with. Whatever parts of my heart he once held have long been reclaimed. There's a quiet freedom in not needing closure from someone who never knew how to offer it. I don't miss the house, or the wedding we never had, or the future that never happened. Those dreams belonged to someone else. Someone who didn't know yet what she deserved. These days, my life feels smaller in the best way. Simpler, more honest. Morning walks with my dog. Late nights on the porch with a book and a cup of tea. Laughter with new friends who know me as I am now, not who I used to be. Adam is still around. We're taking things slow, letting something real grow without forcing it. Some days we talk for hours. Other days we just exist side by side, and that's enough. I'm not building my life around someone else anymore. I'm building it around me. There are moments when sadness sneaks in. When I remember how sure I once was about the wrong person, when I miss the dogs I had to leave behind. But I let those moments come and go like waves, without drowning in them. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy. It's painful. And it's real. And real is better than perfect. I've learned that love isn't supposed to feel like constantly begging for scraps of affection. It's supposed to feel like coming home to yourself. If anyone reading this feels stuck in a life that no longer fits, please know you're not alone. You're stronger than the stories you've been told about yourself. You're allowed to start over. You're allowed to choose yourself, even when it feels like the hardest thing in the world, especially then. As for me, I'm not looking back anymore. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. And the road ahead, no matter how uncertain, feels like mine.